Now, let us talk about the song that might be Steve Cropper's greatest achievement, the one that shows just how talented he was as both a guitar player and a songwriter. Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay was recorded in November of 1967. Otis Redding had been staying in a houseboat in California, looking out at the water, watching ships come and go, and he started writing this song about loneliness and feeling lost and trying to find your place in the world. When he came back to Memphis to work with Steve Cropper, he had the basic idea and some lyrics, but the song was not finished yet. Steve Cropper helped Otis Redding turn those feelings and ideas into one of the most perfect songs ever written. They worked together, with Cropper writing verses and guitar parts while Redding sang and added his own touches. The song was different from anything Otis Redding had done before. It was quieter, more thoughtful, almost folksy in some places. There was whistling in it, and the sound of waves and seagulls. It was gentle and sad and beautiful. Just a few weeks after they finished recording it, Otis Redding died in a plane crash at only 26 years old, along with 4 members of another Stax band. The whole music world was heartbroken. Steve Cropper had to finish the song while dealing with the death of his friend. He had to add the final touches, the waves and the seagulls and the little details that made it perfect, all while knowing that Otis would never get to hear the finished product. The song came out in 1968 and went straight to #1, becoming the first song by a dead artist to reach the top of the charts. Millions of people bought the record. Millions more still listen to it today and get tears in their eyes from its beauty and sadness. Steve Cropper helped create that. He took his friends' ideas and feelings and turned them into something that will live forever. Throughout his career, Steve Cropper won every award and honor that a musician can win. He was put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992 with Booker T and the MGs. He was put into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2005. He won Grammy Awards and received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the music industry, but none of those awards changed who he was as a person. He stayed humble. He stayed focused on the music. He kept working, kept playing, kept creating new songs even when he was in his 80s. In 2024, when he was 83 years old, Steve Cropper released a new album called Friendly Town that featured guitar legends Billy Gibbons and Brian May. The album was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Blues Album. Think about that for a second. A man in his 80s, who had already accomplished more than most musicians accomplish in 10 lifetimes, was still making new music, still pushing himself, still working with other great artists to create something fresh and exciting. That is dedication. That is love for the art form. That is what separates the legends from everyone else. Steve Cropper's guitar playing style influenced thousands of musicians who came after him. Young guitar players would listen to his records and realize that you do not need to play fast to be great. You do not need to show off to be respected. You just need to serve the song, to listen to everyone else, to find the perfect notes that fit the moment. Guitar teachers tell their students to study Steve Cropper if they want to understand rhythm guitar, if they want to learn how to play with other people instead of playing over them, if they want to know how to make a band sound tight and professional. One British magazine ranked Steve Cropper as the second greatest guitarist of all time. The guitar that played on Green Onions is silent now. The hands that helped write Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay will never play another chord. The man who defined Memphis soul music with his lean, tight, perfect guitar style is gone. But the music remains. It will always remain. As long as people have ears to hear and hearts to feel, Steve Cropper's music will be alive, making people move, making people smile, making people remember that sometimes the quietest person in the room is actually the most powerful. Steve Cropper showed us that you do not have to be the star to be legendary. You do not have to play a million notes to change music forever. You just have to care about what you are doing. You have to serve something bigger than yourself, and you have to put your whole heart into every single note. That was his gift to the world, and that gift will never die. The man behind the guitar sound that changed music forever just stopped playing, and the world feels a little quieter today. Steve Cropper died on Wednesday, December 3, 2025, in Nashville at 84 years old. Just one day before his death, a close friend visited him at a recovery center where he was getting better after falling recently, and even in those last hours, Cropper was still making music, still creating new songs, still living for the only thing that truly mattered to him. The doctors have not said exactly what caused his death, but his passing has left a giant hole in the heart of music lovers everywhere who grew up with his songs playing in their lives. Maybe you are thinking right now, who is Steve Cropper? If you have never heard his name before, do not worry, because you have definitely heard his music. Every time you have heard that funky guitar riff in a soul song, every time you felt your body move to a rhythm without even trying, every time a classic song made you stop what you were doing and just listen, there is a good chance Steve Cropper had something to do with it. He was not the guy standing in front screaming into the microphone. He was not the flashy guitar player doing crazy solos that go on forever. No, Steve Cropper was something much better and much more special. He was the glue that held everything together, the secret sauce that made every song taste perfect, the backbone that gave soul music its spine. Steve Cropper helped start a band called Booker T and the MGs. And this band became the most important backing group in American music history. They played on more hit songs than you could count in a week. They were the house band for Stax Records in Memphis, Tennessee, which means they played on almost every single song that came out of that studio. When Otis Redding walked into Stax Records to record a song, the MGs were there waiting for him. When Sam and Dave needed a band to make their voices sound even better, the MGs were there. When Wilson Pickett came down from another record company just to work with them, they were ready. That is how good they were. Other musicians and singers traveled across the country just to play with Steve Cropper and his bandmates. Think about some of the biggest songs in history. Think about Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding, one of the saddest and most beautiful songs ever made. Steve Cropper helped write that song. Think about Green Onions, that instrumental track that makes you want to dance even if you are alone in your room. Steve Cropper wrote that with his band. Think about In the Midnight Hour by Wilson Pickett, or Knock on Wood by Eddie Floyd. Steve Cropper helped create those too. These are not just random songs that nobody remembers. These are the songs that your parents listened to, that your grandparents danced to, that are still being played on the radio today, more than 60 years after they were first recorded. But here is what made Steve Cropper different from almost every other guitar player you will ever hear about. He did not play guitar to show everyone how fast his fingers could move. He did not add a million notes just because he knew how to play them. Every single note that came out of his guitar had a reason. Every chord, every little melody line, every rhythm he played was there to help the song, to make the singer sound better, to give the whole band more power. In a world where so many musicians want to be the star, Steve Cropper was happy to be the helper, the supporter, the guy who made everyone else shine brighter. There is a famous story that shows exactly how Steve Cropper thought about music. Someone asked him once how he played guitar, and he explained that before the recording session started, he would check his sound and make sure his guitar was working right. But once the music began, he stopped listening to himself and started listening to everyone else. He listened to the singer, he listened to the drummer, he listened to the piano player, and then he would find the little spaces in between all those sounds and fill them with exactly the right guitar notes. He did not try to play over everyone else. He did not try to be the loudest person in the room. He played around all the other musicians, fitting his guitar parts into the gaps like puzzle pieces. Keith Richards, the famous guitar player from the Rolling Stones, was once asked what he thought about Steve Cropper. Keith Richards has played with some of the greatest musicians in the world. He has seen it all, heard it all, done it all. And when someone asked him about Steve Cropper, he just said 2 words. Perfect, man. That is all he needed to say, because those 2 words said everything. Steve Cropper was perfect. His playing was perfect. His style was perfect. His approach to music was perfect. Steve Cropper was born in 1941 on a farm in Missouri, a place where country music was the only thing people listened to. But when he was just 9 years old, his family moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and his whole world changed. Memphis was where black and white musicians were creating something brand new. Memphis was where gospel music from the churches was mixing with blues music from the streets. Memphis was where soul music and rock and roll were being born. Young Steve Cropper soaked it all up like a sponge. He got his first guitar from a mail-order catalog when he was 14 years old, and from that day forward, music became his life. He listened to Chuck Berry and learned how to make the guitar rock. He listened to Jimmy Reed and learned how to make the guitar sound bluesy. He listened to Chet Atkins and learned how to play clean and precise. He took all these different styles and created his own sound, something that nobody had heard before. By the time he was a teenager, he was already playing in bands with his friends from school. They called themselves the Royal Spades at first, then changed their name to the Marquis. The Marquis had a big hit song called Last Night, and suddenly, these kids from Memphis were on the radio across America. But the real magic happened when Steve Cropper and some other musicians formed Booker T and the MGs. This band was special for one very important reason. Booker T. Jones and Al Jackson were black musicians. Steve Cropper and Donald Duck Dunn were white musicians. This was the 1960s in the South. Remember, when black people and white people were not supposed to be friends, when they could not eat at the same restaurants or drink from the same water fountains. But inside Stax Records, none of that hatred existed. Cropper said that when you walked through the door at Stax, there was no such thing as color. Everyone was there for the same reason, to make great music and get a hit record. They were brothers, united by rhythm and soul and the pure love of creating something beautiful together. Booker T and the MGs did not just make their own hit songs. They were the backing band for almost every artist who came to Stax Records. They played behind Otis Redding when he recorded his biggest hits. They were there when Sam and Dave sang Soul Man. They backed Wilson Pickett, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas, Eddie Floyd, and dozens of other soul singers. And they were so good at what they did that even musicians from other record companies wanted to work with them. That is the highest praise a backing band can get. When people who do not even work at your studio are willing to travel to Memphis just to have you play on their songs, you know you are something special. One of the most famous moments in Steve Cropper's career happens right in the middle of the song Soul Man by Sam and Dave. The song is moving along. The horns are blasting, the singers are powerful, and then suddenly Sam Moore shouts out, "Play it, Steve!" And Cropper hits this perfect guitar riff that cuts through everything like a hot knife through butter. That slide sound he made came from using a simple Zippo cigarette lighter on his guitar strings. Not some expensive gadget or fancy studio equipment. Just a lighter that anyone could buy at a gas station. That moment put Steve Cropper's name into music history forever. Years later, when John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd formed the Blues Brothers, they kept that exact moment in their version of Soul Man, with Belushi shouting, "Play it, Steve!" Just like Sam Moore did in the original. The Blues Brothers brought Steve Cropper to a whole new generation of fans who had never heard of Stax Records. Belushi and Aykroyd were comedy stars from Saturday Night Live. But they were also serious music fans who loved blues and soul music with all their hearts. When they put together the Blues Brothers band, they did not hire session musicians who would just play whatever they were told. They hired the real masters, the legends who had created this music in the first place. Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn joined the Blues Brothers, and together they made the 1980 movie that introduced millions of young people to soul music for the first time. The Blues Brothers movie was funny and exciting, but the music was real and powerful and authentic. The album Briefcase Full of Blues went double platinum and reached #1 on the charts. Suddenly kids who only knew rock music were discovering Otis Redding and Sam and Dave and Wilson Pickett. They were going back and listening to the original Stax recordings and realizing that the guy in sunglasses playing guitar in the Blues Brothers movie was the same guy who had played on all those classic songs their parents loved. Steve Cropper never looked down on these new fans or acted like the Blues Brothers was beneath him. He embraced it, he enjoyed it, and he used it as a chance to share the music he loved with anyone who would listen.